it's Christy. Welcome back to my channel and welcome to day 5 of my 2019 holiday card series. Today I'm going to be making a card using Lawn Fawn's Christmas Fishes, You Are Sublime and Mermaid for You. So I've stamped my images out on some Nina Solar White cardstock with Memento Tuxedo Black ink, and I'll be coloring with my Copic markers today. The first image I'm working on is the little crab over on the far right. And for him, I'm using R22, R24, and R29. I wanted a red combo that would be a little bit more on the pink end, so that R22 and R24 are going to lend a nice kind of salmon pink that will get intensified with the R29. So the R29 is my shadow. And then I'm going to bring in the R24 as my mid-tone. I'm going to fill in those tiny little feet on either side with just those two darkest shades. And then on his claws and his face, I will save a good portion for that lightest shade, the R22. So I'll just fill in all that remains. And I apologize if my voice sounds a little funny on this video. I have been sick with a head cold for a week, so I'm going to just try to do my best to get through today's video for you guys. So I filled in a few more things with that red combination, and now I'm moving on to the mermaid and the scuba diver's skin, and I'm using E000, E00, and E11. I decided to do them both the same just to keep the color palette very simplified, since there is quite a few colors on today's card already. And I did bring in a little R20 for the mermaid's rosy cheeks. Next up is G14, G16, and G19, and I'm going to use these shades to color in the diver's wetsuit. So this Christmas card is actually for my brother and his new wife. And he is a scuba diver. He is a diving instructor at our local diving school, and he also goes on vacations and things to dive as well. He's just really passionate about diving. And his now wife, they just got married last weekend. She's got very long blonde hair, and he likes to call her his mermaid. So I thought this card would be perfect for them. So I'm just using the darkest shade, the G19, on the outside edge of the top part, and then on the bottom part I'm just shadowing from the inside of his legs, and then just pulling that G16 towards the middle, and then the G14 is the lightest shade. I'm also going to do the top part of his wetsuit the same. I just wanted it to be like all one piece. So I just colored it exactly the same with the darkest shade kind of wrapping around his mask, and then getting lighter as it goes towards the top with that highlight. I also did a little bit of the seaweed Christmas tree or kelp Christmas tree with that shade and the mermaid's tail. And now I'm going to switch to a darker set of greens. I'm using G24, G28, and G29, and they're just going to be a little bit of a deeper tone that will match with the previous greens that I used, but just offer a little bit more depth for the different accessories. So I'm going to do his flippers and belt and his mask and the tube that goes down to his regulator on his back. All of those are going to be in this darker green, and then I'm going to finish off the kelp Christmas tree with those shades as well, just to give it a little bit more depth and dimension. I'm actually going to flip my panel upside down to do the mermaid's hair since it's floating above her, and I just thought that might be the easiest way to flick in the color. Now, I will say that I am not an expert at coloring hair, and it's actually been a while since I've done it. So it's one of those things that you kind of have to remember how to do if you haven't done it in a while, and if you weren't that good at it to begin with. So it doesn't really come naturally to me, is I guess what I'm trying to say. But the shades that I'm using are Y32, Y35, and Y38. I wouldn't say that these are the perfect blonde colors to match my sister-in-law's hair. but they were the best I could do with what I have in my collection. I realized there are some yellows that are missing, but I just used that Y38 as the darkest towards the tips, and then I pulled it down with the Y35. I eventually did end up flipping it right side up again just to make sure I had everything looking correct. And then the Y32, that highlighted shade, that's going to go mostly around her face and just have that lightness around there to give her a little bit of a glow. Moving on to another red combination. You guys know that this is my favorite, especially for a nice Christmas red. So this is R29, which I had used previously as the darkest on the crab. Now that's going to become my lightest, and then combined with R39 and R59. And I'll do all the little Christmas hats and ribbons with those shades. And then all that's left is a few of the little gray accessories like the clamshells on the kelp Christmas tree and the whites of the Santa hats and the shells and gift and stone. And for those I'm using C0, C1, and C3. And then I'll trim these out with the matching dies. For my background, I'm taking some Distress Oxides and blending those onto a piece of Bristol Smooth Surface paper. The first color that I'm using is Gathered Twigs, and I am blending that onto the bottom of the panel to be the sand. Next up is Twisted Citron. I wanted kind of a greenish color to tie in with all the green accents, and then just to help blend from the brown into the blue. So I'm kind of doing a semicircle, like a U shape at the bottom there. The next shade is Tumbled Glass, and I'm making sure to overlap a little bit of that Twisted Citron to form a new shade there, kind of a darker green. And I will go back and forth and blend over those transitions each time to just help with the blend to make it nice and smooth. And then the final color that's going on my scene is going to be a Blueprint Sketch. So I'm just going to grab that and blend that onto the top of the panel and keep up with that little U shape, just blending it into the previous shade. And then I'll go back with my tumbled glass and smooth that transition once again. Once I'm happy with the blend, I will grab my Tim Holtz Distress Sprayer and spritz some water all over the panel, and then let that soak in for a few seconds and blot that up with a paper towel. And you can repeat this process as many times as you like to get a look that you're happy with. I think I did this 2 or 3 times, and then I'll set that panel aside to dry and move on to my sentiment. I want to white heat emboss the sentiment onto some black cardstock. So I'm first going to treat that with my EK Success powder tool, and then I will stamp down my sentiment using Versamark ink. It's just a clear sticky ink that works great for embossing. And I will coat that with some white embossing powder. Flip it over and tap off any excess, and then I will bring in my heat tool. I heat that from the back first and then come to the front just to try to eliminate any warping and just melt that until it's nice and bright white and shiny. And then I'm going to, while I have my MISTI out, pop in my card base and do a little more stamping on the inside to finish things off. And I'm using the greeting that says, "We fish you a Merry Christmas," and then another fish and the bubbles using jalapeno ink from Lawn Fawn. Once the background was completely dry, I trimmed that down using one of the stitch rectangle stackables to give it that nice stitch detail along the outside edge. And now I'm going to begin to set my scene. I've added some foam tape to the back of all of my images, and I'm just laying them down into place very gently at first until I'm sure that I have things exactly where I want them, and then I'll go ahead and press them down into place once I'm completely positive that that's where they should go. This foam tape can be hard to pull up, especially on an ink blended surface like this particular background. So you really do need to make sure before you press things down that that's where they should go. And I am going to run into a little situation here with the sentiment. I'm realizing that I did trim that into 2 pieces and there wasn't going to be room for both. So I was able to pull up my scuba diver and adjust him just slightly without too much tearing. But some of the other images that I tried to just reposition, there was just too much, it would leave like a hole of white cardstock behind if you tried to shift those. In hindsight, I probably should have put the crab and the little rock that he's standing on down a little further. But once I realized there was not going to be any way to move them without tearing, I decided to just squeeze in that sentiment by overlapping the scuba diver's foot and then kind of tucking the bottom one behind the fish's hat just a bit. The pattern papers that I'm using on today's card are from the Snow Day Remix from Lawn Fawn. This is an older collection that was re-released this year, and I'm so glad it was because it was always one of my favorites. So I have trimmed those down using the Stitch Rectangle Stackables once again. The focal panel was the second largest, and this one is the largest. And I even used it for the holly print just to keep that stitching line consistent on the outside edges. So I'm going to stick that across the center. I've added more foam tape to the back of my focal panel, so I'll line that up in the center and press that down into place. Normally, if I'm going to be mailing the Christmas cards, I like not to have so much dimension, but this one I will be hand delivering, so it wasn't an issue. And you guessed what my final embellishment will be, crystal stickles. I'm going to add that to all of the little white places on the Santa hats. I'm also going to add it to the mermaid's tail and top, and to the scuba diver's regulator and mouthpiece, and to the ribbons and the clams on the kelp tree. I also decided to just dot a few little bubbles into the background just to help that also have a little sparkle and shine. And I did skip the starfish on top of the kelp Christmas tree in the video, but in the photos you'll notice that I decided to add it after the effect. So there's a look at all that sparkle and shine and another peek at the inside. I hope you guys enjoyed day 5 of my 2019 holiday card series. I have so many more ideas for you guys, so many cards planned, so please do make sure that you're subscribed and that you've hit that notification bell so you can be sure that the videos always end up in your feed. Day 5 of the previous 2 years of holiday card series are on screen right now, so you can continue watching with either one of those. I also have playlists for all of my holiday card series dating back to 2013, so you can also find those on my channel. I hope you all have an amazing day. Bye-bye.